Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a nice spring break and you are back ready and dedicated to finishing the semester strong. Today's open office open office hour is available for you. I don't have anybody here just yet. You may still be getting back into the swing of things. But remember, we do have an exam next Wednesday, so make sure that you are up and around by that time. Speaking of the exam, I wanted to let you know that it seems like we're right at the end of the semester, but and we only have one regular exam left and the final exam. However, I want to point out to you that we have five regular exams that are 100 points each, but only the top four highest scores count. So that's 400 points. Well, the exam next Wednesday is 100 points. We have a 200-point final exam. So you've got a total possible points of 600, 400 regular and 200 final exam. So you got a 200-point exam still left. You got a 100-point exam still left. That's 300 of your 600 points. You got half your grade still left between next Wednesday and the final exam. So if you've done well, great. Keep up the good work. If you haven't done as well as you'd like, there's a lot of room for improvement still available. So you still have that. Speaking of points and things of that nature, I have added the 8 points that I promised everyone on the exam number two. When I went back and looked at it, there were two questions that were kind of quirky and really weren't appropriate, and so I made an adjustment. I told you I was going to make an adjustment of adding 8 points. I have done that. Those 8 points are now back up and on your grade. So your score is different than what you've seen before. It's 8 points more. Okay, the next exam is on corporations and small business organizations and entities. First, I want to talk about corporations. Let me go ahead and share my screen to you. If you settings. Well, let me see if I can get that up and running, which I will here in a second. Nope. Share screen. Share number one. And there we go. Okay, you should have on your screen, move that out of the way, corporate organization governing documents. For purposes of this exam, and I'm going to give you a few things that are here. Hopefully you can see that fine. I'm not going to sit here and read it to you, but I'm going to talk about a couple of things that are on here. Um, it's going to be important for both corporations and small business in how they are organized. What documents do that? What documents are public? What documents are private? Um, when I get a small business organization, same exact thing. You're going to need to look at that, maybe make a comparison with limited liability companies and corporations, those kind of things. It's going to be important for you to understand the inner workings of a corporation. In other words, who is responsible for what kind of things? If I ask you who would be responsible for approving a merger with another company, do you know if that's the officers of the company? Is it the directors? Is it the shareholders? Is it all of them? None of them? Somebody else? You got to know those kind of things. Um, Corporate personhood. Is a corporation a legal person? It is. How does that work? We've talked about that a little bit already in criminal law and all that. But corporations act through their people, but they are legal entities as well. Need to know certain rules that we discussed and were available in the materials, like the business judgment rule, um, like the certain conflict of interest rules, breach of fiduciary duty, those kind of things. Preemptive rights. How do preemptive rights work? What do they mean? And how do they operate? Could you actually calculate how preemptive rights might work in a given situation? I don't have the exam written yet, so I can't promise you anything that's on there, but in my mind, I'm thinking of potential questions. So keep that in mind as well. This is not a tax class. Granted, it's not a tax class, but there are certain aspects that you just need to know about taxation and the various entities, whether, and again, I'm kind of crossing over when I get to small business organizations. It'll be a lot quicker because I've discussed some of the things here. But when we talk about taxation, you need to know in general how taxation works of a corporation, whether it's a C corporation or a subchapter S corporation. You need to know how it works in terms of limited liability companies that are under the default classification rule of a partnership, how partnership or flow through tax entities type situations work. And again, even though it's not a tax class, I'm going to probably require you to calculate the proper taxation in several different situations. What happens when an organization um, earns income? Is it taxed on that income? If it's not taxed on that income, or even if it is, what happens when they distribute that income to their owners? Are the owners then taxed on that income? When does double taxation actually occur? How does it apply? What type of entities does it apply to? Um, are there situations where the organization, the entity is not taxed, but they hold on to the income and they don't distribute anything, and yet the owners are still taxed even though they didn't get anything? And the answer is yes, there are situations. You need to know what those situations are. The materials go into detail with it. In fact, I've got a separate video talking about taxation, at least one separate video, maybe two, on double taxation and then taxation of entities, flow through entities. Very, very important. Very, very important. Liability protection. That's probably the number one reason why a lot of these things were developed in the first place. You go into business, you don't want to have a situation where you could lose your home, your assets, your personal assets, your bank account, everything you own is gone because of some liability the business that you own incurred. Well, as a result, these limited liability protection entities were developed: corporations, limited partnerships, limited liability companies, etc. And it's important to know which ones of these companies provide that liability protection and which ones don't. What about a sole proprietorship? What about a general partnership? Sometimes you can have owners that are personally liable that coexist with other owners who are not liable at all in the same entity, such as in a limited liability partnership. The different because you have different types of owners, and you need to know that. Again, exam's not written yet, but I'm thinking about these questions. What about situations in which the uh, what about situations in which the liability protection is destroyed? You need to know those situations: piercing the corporate veil, alter ego theories, how those kind of things work. Board of directors, procedures, what's a quorum? We I generally use and it can vary, but I generally use the default rule that a quorum is a majority of the board of directors. You got 9 board of director members, a quorum is 5. You need to know how to calculate a quorum. You need to know how to calculate what's the least number of people, of directors or shareholders. The same rule applies to both. The least number that could ever vote in favor of a particular corporate action and it still be a legal corporate action. You need to understand that no matter what the number is, number of directors, number of shareholders, you need to understand how to do a quorum and then separately how to determine what the least number of people who could vote in favor of that corporate action taking place and it still be a valid action. Also, in general, know when a supermajority might be required, 75% or so, 2/3 majority, that kind of thing in certain circumstances. What are those type of circumstances? Okay, that takes care of that one. Now let's go on to small business. Again, I promise you this one would be short. Notice I've only got one page here of notes that are available. Um, and I think most of it we've already talked about as I skim through with that. Again, kind of know the same sort of things, how they're formed, which ones are the easy way to form, the easiest to form, which ones provide protection, which ones don't provide protection, what documents you use, which documents are public, which documents are private, how you should be able to do a detailed analogy and comparison between the LLC and a corporation. Um, Taxation, yeah, got to do taxation too. I'll probably give you a default tax rate of 20% or something. Don't hold me to the 20%, something like that. And then ask you to calculate what the taxes are when a corporation or limited partnership or general partnership earns so much income, and what happens, how much tax does each of the partners or owners or members or shareholders, how much do they have to pay? And how much do they have to pay if they're distributed income? How much do they have to pay if they're not distributed income? Are they the same? Are they different? They're the same sometimes, they're different sometimes. Depends upon the entity, depends upon the classification. Got to know all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm glad I'm having this for you on Thursday, because you still have 6 days left before the exam, and you should be able to get ready for it. I don't think it's terribly complicated, but these little tidbits, students sometimes call them trick questions. They're not trick questions. It's actually just knowing what the law is and applying it. These little tidbits, these little fact-oriented kind of scenarios are going to make the difference between making an A on the exam and a C on the exam. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. After this, just to give you a little more of a heads up on what's coming. I'm still stalling, just giving a few more minutes in case somebody wants to show up. We have only one more exam after the one Wednesday, which is the final exam. I will have at least one more bonus opportunity, probably 2 more bonus opportunities for you as well. Be looking on Canvas, be checking your email. I'm assuming that you have automatic updates emailed to yourself. If you don't, you need to set that up. You should do that for all your classes, not just mine. For purposes of the final exam, there's a lot of material a lot of material, particularly in contract law, but there's a lot of material in employment law as well. And even though it's basically a month before the final exam, and that's the next major exam that you have, the only other major exam that you have, do not delay in studying for this. Start absorbing the material now. As always, if there's something I can do to help you in the class, please let me know. I'm going to end this here, and good luck with the exam Wednesday. Good luck with your finals when they start coming up, and we'll see you on the next one.